Okay, hello everybody and welcome to this summer special roundup edition of Burgess Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where this episode will look at everything to do with the London market as always, but we'll kind of reflect on the first 6 months of 2026, some of the themes that we've been talking about, perhaps some of the trends that we're seeing, and perhaps little shifts and changes. And then we might have a look into the future then, just to see how the second half of the year might pan out.
Yeah.
It's been, I think it's been a really interesting year so far for a number of reasons. So I personally have seen a real interest at the events in AI, obviously optimization, yes, automation. But the conversations haven't been around the technology or the tools. They've been very much around what are our business challenges and how can those either tools or processes or new ways of thinking be applied to those challenges in order to either solve them or remove some of the friction. So that's been an interesting change, I'd say, from the last 12 months where everyone was looking at AI and just saying, oh my gosh, look at the capabilities, and in 5 years' time we'll all be driving driverless cars and that kind of blue sky stuff.
Well, you wouldn't be driving in them, no, driverless.
No.
Just not
You'd
to
be
be pedantic, but
you'd
yeah.
be a passenger, I suppose.
Exactly.
But I guess legally, from an insurance point of view, you'd
staying.
have to be the driver sitting
That's
behind
true,
the
probably.
wheel.
Yeah.
Anyhow, digress slightly. But you get my drift. That
Yes.
kind of conversation
No, I agree.
shift
Yeah.
has taken place. I also think that, just keeping on that theme, that organisations are doing some real work in the area and then taking the results, whether they be good or bad, and learning the lessons from them. So I think in the past we've seen new technologies come along, stuff's been tried, budget's been put aside, it hasn't worked, it's been dropped. And then the story goes, oh no, we tried that 5 years ago, it didn't work. Whereas I think now we're in an environment where the technology, the pace of change is such that you can easily spin something up relatively cheaply and see if it works, and then learn the lessons and take it in a different direction.
Yeah.
Somebody said today when I was speaking to them around kind of this technology, they said it's not technology transformation, because that transformation suggests that you go from step A to step B to C and D. What he says, it's a revolution, because you go here, then you go, oh no, that didn't work, so you go bang here, then across here, then you try something here. And it's kind of this kind of almost chaotic ecosystem that we're in at the moment that then might lead to a transformation, that step change. But at the moment, people are still feeling things out. But what I'm seeing is the conversations are grounded in business challenges, not the technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is, just stepping back from that even into the wider world, I think clearly there's a lot generally going on in the kind of geopolitical space, the economic space, which we're aware of. We seem to be roasting in subtropical temperatures in London at the moment, which is slightly worrying.
For the third time,
Therefore, things are becoming, there's a real, I sense it's a kind of more real world that we're living in. There's lots of real things we kind of almost tangibly perceive. And then if you look at the AI space, one, we can use it, do it. We've talked about this, it's a thing that everybody's using more and more. Other than my children who abhor it because it's obviously going to kill the planet. So that's another interesting backlash that's happening, that in America in particular to AI. There are concerns about AI as to whether the bubble will burst.
Yeah.
There are clearly, businesses are now in insurance are saying, right, okay, what point do we start paying for the tokens for this? And so we've got a path to go down, which, as you say, is kind of feels chaotic, because even the big companies like Anthropic are saying we don't know what's going to happen. It's a bit of a, it's that thing where driving down the motorway at 90 miles an hour with only the handbrake to potentially stop us crashing. So there's a feeling of, kind of plummeting or careering towards something, and we're not quite sure what. And therefore, I agree with you. I think it is a feeling in turn. One, there is a soft cycle, which I think is somewhat part of this, but it's not really the big deal. It's not what's really going on. There is a battle in insurance between broking and insurance, the capital providers and the developers of the product, to grow and to make this somehow work for customers, to grow the industry. Yeah. And I think that is where the tension lies, really, which is, what is your strategy? What do you do? What do you do? So we've had very big mergers. We've had several mergers, and the biggest of which I think is the Zurich Beazley, but that is still to play out, and there's others that are still playing out. So people are moving, and people are, losing jobs as well, I guess, at the same time. So there's a lot going on in that, just in that space, and that's not just in London; it's global. And more mergers perhaps to come. And then you've got, I think Acrisure have just announced 10% of their staff go on the premise that it's AI driven. They won't need that number of people.
Yep.
And so you've got a kind of really, I agree, a really mixed picture of where to go. And classically, this is where the best strategy will win. And is that strategy to sit tight and not do anything, or is that strategy to take risks, jump into AI and embrace it, jump into technology, go for efficiency, make a dash for it, or do, like the England football team, close it down and see it out to the bitter end, and come out victorious. I don't think anybody knows the future ever, so they will be everybody's kind of playing around with the strategies. On the broking side, staff are being poached and things. So you've got, everywhere you look, you've kind of got upheaval and a fear almost. Markets work on fear and greed, and I think at the moment it's on fear, because their fears are what will happen with technology, what will happen to rates. Will we still be relevant as the broking world drives the number of providers down? Will technology mean that we are having to lose lots of staff and change those staff into people with different skills and so on? So yeah, it's a very uncertain time in many ways, I think, and that's reflective of the world largely, I suppose. Everybody wants stability, but there is none.
Yes, yeah, it's interesting. I think we were just chatting before we came on air. I was at an event last night, and somebody asked, "Do you think the London market is growing?" No, they said, "Well, the London market is growing," as a matter of fact. And I was thinking, well, through which lens are you looking at? Because if you look at it through, the mergers and acquisitions, then you can probably say no. If you look at it through talent, then you may also say no, because there's a bit, as we've talked about before, there's a lot of senior leaders that are leaving the industry, and there is a gap in certainly in that middle management, as well as the kind of graduate intake as well. So you're kind of saying, well, are we growing in terms of people and skills and capabilities? Unsure about that. And then you're kind of left with the financials.
Yeah, and I don't think it is. I don't think the cake of London is growing. I mean, not much. And perhaps will contract, which is why all the big insurers I speak to are worried about relevance, because they're seeing a few years ahead. Look, if we're not relevant, if we're not in one of those top 10 brands, we are not going to get the business, and that's a vicious cycle that we get into, which we can't afford to be in as a business. So there is a very, strong fear that and drive then for businesses to remain relevant. So they've got to build those relationships, work those facilities, whatever they need to do, they have to do. There are a number of players I meet who are just sitting tight, saying we're just going to wait. But I think that's a very old-fashioned view. I think that's sitting tight. That's not going to work. I think the big players who I speak to, if anybody's out there, they're the ones who are driving this, and they've got the deeper pockets to sit it out, but they're not doing that. They are saying we're going to try and win now and grab share and therefore be in a better position if the market does improve. And I think they are all looking for profitability, but they're also looking at the same time for efficiency, and that's digitization of some form, for these businesses. I think it's very hard to think of all the things at the same time. That's the problem at the moment, is that you could think of efficiency, but then, we've got to grow, and we've got to take on new risks. We've got to think of evolving risks. We've got to think about, would we insure data centres, which is a big challenge. So all of these things are there, but they're very hard to, strategy is about choices.
Yeah.
And it's much simpler to have a strategy where you've got two choices and you choose one of them than 59 different choices. So the industry is in a bind because there's so many things it needs to fix. Just to get you to the level that you're efficient. So do you do that, or then do you innovate at the same time? Can you do both at the same time? I mean, it's very difficult. And then you're back to the, you can go to the data argument where the data's terrible, so you can't innovate until the data's sorted. Yeah. Then you've got where are the relationships going in the value chain between the brokers, the MGAs, the outsourcing operations, service companies, and everything else in the distribution end of things, which is in flux. And I think one of the things I am seeing as a trend is globalization. I think of the big players is saying that the way through this is to say, set up globally, have those options, shut down Latin America for 2 years if it's not great, open up Germany, go to the US, look for the opportunities from a global perspective, turn the lights off if you have to in some places, turn them on in others, but therefore you need scale and you need automation to deliver and so on. So I think you're getting more bifurcation potentially now with smaller specialists who will be challengers and can do that in monolines and so on. So again, that is a structural change that is coming, and I'm seeing businesses now much more on a global basis, much more about look, we need to measure everything everywhere. We can't just measure London on its own. So I think there's much more of a cohesive feel coming to the market, and insurers saying we're not just a bunch of departments, we're an offer under our brand. It's what we're delivering to that customer through the broking network or distribution channel. Yeah,
that's interesting. So I had a question for you, Ben, around kind of leadership at the top, the kind of the board level. I think we spoke about this a few weeks ago, about whether boards have kind of the skills, capability and leadership to make those kind of strategic decisions and then stick to them. And we've seen a lot of consolidation, and so people are coming and going and chopping and changing. And I think that the tenure for CEOs now is quite short, 2.5, maybe 3 years. When we're riding these choppy waters, and you need to have that kind of strategic anchor, and then the leadership then to, when something hits you from the side, you could go, no, that's not us. Or you go, yes, we will deploy something because actually that does align with what we want to do.
Yeah, so in effect, you have got a lot of movement, I think, at the top now, and both people being brought into businesses. CFC have just hired Adam Wimslow from ex-Aviva, Direct Line, but a senior big hitter with a view to saying we'll take that business forward in a global sense, and other things I'm sure that he'll talk about. So that's one, but also where you've got these consolidated businesses, these mergers, then you've got new management being reshuffled. And before this, I think we talked on the show about, lots of big management moves in lots of these businesses. So I think they are looking for the right people to take those strategies, decide on those strategies, and that leadership is becoming incredibly important to kind of decide really on where we're going to go in this complex environment and what we're going to do. A chief exec said to me maybe 6 months ago, if you haven't got a value proposition at the moment for your business, then you're likely to be toast, because there are so many players jostling for the business. The pie isn't growing that much. We're not really ready yet because of we're a bit hamstrung, and we've got a kind of messy relationship sometimes on the broking side, and that's all being worked through. Data's a bit crap. We can't innovate so easily. We can't just go jumping into all sorts of new areas that could potentially lose us lots of money. So there are difficult calls to make, some of which where you don't really have the evidence. So good example is these data centers. There is no experience of insuring data centers because they're a completely new thing, and yet the scale of these things is enormous. I mean, vast buildings and properties and risks associated with them. And so what do insurers do? Just jump in and hope it's going to be okay? Could do that. Who knows? Got Patrick Tiernan at Lloyd's saying we've got to embrace risk, got to embrace these new risks. So there are calls from high places which will hit these leaders, and they'll have to think about it as to what are we prepared to risk, and that's it. It's a risk business. We're in the risk industry. This, as I say, I don't feel like it's a moment to sit back and hope that it's just a bit of the cycle again and the same old, same old. It isn't the same old, same old. It's very, very different. Yeah. And I think over the last few years, a few businesses, quite a few that I've worked with or didn't work with, are did the same thing, sat tight, thought they could cherry pick, and now they're in trouble, really, because they've lost that market penetration, that choice, those brokers who would bring them the business, and they're having to build that up. But then there's other competitors who've got that. So it's I don't think many will make that mistake again.
No. It was quite interesting. I was speaking to someone who left who's in a technology, data and AI role, so this 3 years ago, so quite early on in the hype cycle. And he said to me that an underwriter had come to him and said that AI will never be able to write risk as well as I have because I can spot the flags, I got the gut instinct, I'm doing all this. And he said he spoke to this guy and then he resigned because he was just going, I need to go somewhere where I'm not having these battles and people want to embrace it. Now, he's in an organisation where they're fully behind it. They have that strategic direction. It's not scattergun. They have a story and a narrative to tell to those kind of naysayers and to bring them along on the journey. And I think it's so important.
I mean, I would call it, I think it's clearly a nonsense to say you only need people to do underwriting, because I think for a long time, way before AI, we've known that a lot of that can be priced and commoditised, and loads of other parts of the market have been commoditised. It's somewhat cultural that it hasn't changed, and because nobody really quite knew between broking and underwriting who should do what and how it should work, and there's been that kind of tussle going on, and we haven't broken the mould. But I know chief execs have said for years, we need to have the point at which we know who we fire. And, that may sound a bit brutal, but it's true. They say, look, we know we don't need all these underwriters, journeymen who are doing administration. It should be done, pricing can be done on a computer. We're reaching that moment. So I think the choice isn't, I could spot things and flags. I think it's, are you in the place where you need a human to do that? Because the rest of it, thanks very much, can be done through AI or through the new technologies. And you better know you're in a place where your human judgment is required and it's necessary, not in that place where I'm afraid it's going to go. And we all know, we have known this for quite some time. I think it's just now that the things have converged, and particularly AI is, can do quite a lot of that, which creates the conditions which I think everybody says we have to move to that place. We have to embrace it, as you say.
So we talked about a bit about underwriting, broking, kind of the macro dynamics. Let's just touch on claims before we give our kind of predictions of
guesses.
Or guesses, yeah, that's it. So I've just written a piece. I've just done a bit of analysis over the London Market claims conference pre-event surveys for the last 3 years to see if there's any kind of trends that we can point to that might give us a clue to where things are going. And I've kind of got just 5 things, and I'll put a link in the show description so you can read it if you like. But one we've already touched on, the sort of AI has moved from this curiosity to being kind of more accountability. So we're moving from that's talking about it to actually doing it and understanding what the implications are. So we've talked quite a bit about that. The next thing is kind of data has become a strategic issue. So if we're talking about AI and tools and automation doing this stuff, then critically important is the foundations of data. And it has been talked about for decades. You know, I've been running conferences around technology, and people have always been talking about the importance of data, but it is now absolutely critical. And so having a good data strategy, especially in claims, with all that kind of unstructured data that comes in as part of a claim is really important. Client expectations. So this is interesting. So kind of moved beyond just speed to actually delivering a service that's required. And you can see that most pronounced, I think, in cyber, where people are not just looking for a quick settlement or a check in the post. They're looking for support. They're looking for third-party help with whatever situation they find themselves in. Fourth one being delegated authority and bordereau issues. So I think that just shows you that 3 years ago, okay, DA was a bit on the side, it was quite profitable. I think now it is of a strategic importance, and for the claims community, that again has just put another extra layer of administrative burden, and they need to really think strategically about how they're going to deal with that. And then the fifth one is kind of the talent conversation we've just been talking about, really. But we always at London Market Claims have sessions about how are we bringing through the next generation of talent. And it seemed to me, you know, for the past couple of years, people have been going, well, you know, I did data entry for the first 3 years of my role, and that's how I learnt the importance of this, that. Yeah, we have to get out of that kind of mindset, I think.
So I was going to say, I think the problem we have in the market in London is that it's still working on the old model and the old thinking. I think you've got to have a revolution in the thinking about the future. I don't think it's going to be anything like the past. I think that is a good example where everybody says, well, why don't we train in exactly the same way when, you know, there was horses and carts in the street, because, you know, that was good. How is anybody going to learn? I mean, I do think that's kind of ridiculous, because of course things move on and we all learn differently. We used to think we could never write things on computers because we used to write them on pen and paper and typewriters, but of course we adapt, we change, we move forward. We move on anyway. So I think all of that stuff, but we've got, you know, the fundamental thing is you know, you and I have been in this for 25-ish years doing the same thing in this market, and it hasn't changed, is the truth be known. It hasn't changed very much. I think at your conference, the keynote said most projects in IT fail. And in London, I should think it's nearly all of them. In fact, and we've talked about, you know, so technology hasn't yet really, you know, it's got some sort of basic, you know, utility and help certain things, but fundamentally we have not reinvented this market. We've not changed claims, it's still done the same. We've not changed underwriting, it's still done the same. It's overmanned, there's too many people, and we're not, and there's a massive protection gap, so we're not addressing the new and evolving risks. We're not doing what Patrick Tiernan is asking for. We're not doing what others, you know, so we're still in an inherently conservative capital side of the business, and therefore there is frustration among brokers, and therefore, but I think what we actually need is a new kind of thinking about a partnership which delivers to the risks that the world needs covered, and it does it quickly and it does it efficiently. And I think that is something between the big brokers and the big insurers, potentially other capital providers, saying, right, and as Patrick Tiernan has said, get government to say what they will and will not cover as well. So what can private capital cover in this new scenario, and then how will we work together? We're still in the old ways of, broker power struggle, brokers have power struggles between brokers and carriers and all of that stuff, which is a waste of time and energy largely, and ultimately is not going to help either group to get where they need to. I think we need to think value chain, who does what in that value chain, how do we deliver, and then how do we collectively grow? Because like it or not, we are in a business where there's codependency between different types of players with different business models and different needs and cultures and all those sorts of things, and we need to work together. We are not a B2C market, we're a B2B market, and I think the B2B bit is not working very well at the moment. It's tense, it's wasteful, it doesn't get things done, and it doesn't innovate particularly. So I think there's somewhere in all of this that we need better collaboration and better thinking, and claims is one of those areas, but you could pretty much write that across the whole piece. And we need common interest, not this constant conversation of, well, brokers want this and we don't want that, and brokers saying carriers don't want this and we want something different. You need to, that kind of needs to somehow now be stopped. Otherwise this industry will be messy and it will not do what it needs to do, and it will not move forward. Whatever brokers think they can do, I don't think they can shift it in the way they think they can. I don't think it's, because ultimately the capital sits with these capital providers. Yes, insurers may not always be the ideal, and you can go to other capital providers, but the insurers do have a lot of expertise and they do have a lot of knowledge and they know how it kind of works. That needs to work better together ultimately. Yeah.
Right, so let's look forward to the next 6 months, Ben.
Yeah.
Up until Christmas. What do you think? Do you think anything materially is going to change? I'm quite excited. I think the conversation is positive around change. So I don't think all the things that you've just listed there that need to change in order to fundamentally shift the dial on this stuff will happen in the next 6 months. But I do think the conversations are in a different place. So, for example, I ran 2 breakfast briefings over the last couple of weeks around kind of data, and data specifically within underwriting. And there is a real first recognition, to your point, that there needs to be collaboration around this. Secondly, that there are now tools that are available to solve some of the intractable data problems and interoperability between brokers, carriers, or interdepartmental, whatever they are, blockers on the data front. And 12 months ago, 18 months ago, I think people still would have been tying themselves in knots going, well, we need a standard and everyone has to agree it and it must be all done through Lloyd's and all that kind of thing. So I'm quite positive. I'm going to be, London Market Claims in October is traditionally kind of the more sober of the 4 conferences. Claims is a serious business and they come to that conference in that spirit. But we noticed last year particularly that there was a buzz of excitement that stuff's happening. I do notice at TinTech Data Jam that people were saying claims is an area of investment for technology, and we've talked about it before. It's been underinvested in the past. Yeah. So I do think, let's come full circle back to our strategic direction talk. I think those that have got their strategic plan, they know where they're heading, they understand the role that claims plays in getting there. I think we'll start to see some quick wins and start to kind of grow their business through delivering good client service.
I mean, I think there will be things happening in claims. I don't know whether I would go so far as to say there might be as much movement in the next 6 months. I think it may take a bit longer. I think where we might see interesting things going on is bigger partnerships between brokers, even MGAs included, and carriers, these new big players. Because if you're Zurich Beasley, you must sit there saying, okay, let's go and talk to Marsh Aon, let's go and talk about what this provides that's new and different and so on. Everybody else has to react to that. They have to say, oh my God, they're going to do big facilities, they're going to go global, they're going to run bigger lines, they're going to be much more ambitious. And I think that ambition will grow through the next 6 months as you run up to renewals. I think it will be about share and power and all those sorts of things. So we'll move, I think, from all these kind of small circles of things that everybody's, minutiae or in the weeds, into bigger circles where eventually the small stuff will get sorted out because the big decisions are being made. I think claims will come along with that because it's part of the selling of the proposition. But you've also got to get the distribution and the power play stuff right as well. I mean, that's what this market is fundamentally about, is where can we help, where can brokers distribute product and transfer risk anywhere and everywhere. And whether that's done through facilities or open market situations or other products, I think we'll see some big announcements and some, sharp take a breath. Wow, that's a big deal between Marsh and Beasley Zurich or whatever it is. And I think again, I've mentioned Akasha and businesses like that. They're looking to say, well, we will do deals with a few big global providers and shoved enormous amounts of business. And then you've got, the other bit is the E&S US market and the Amwins and the program managers and things like that. So I think there'll be a lot of big stuff happening, and there'll be a sort of mopping up of all the stuff that can be commoditized. You'll start to see that.
Good.
That's where I reckon.
That's what you reckon. We shall see.
It's probably wrong.
we'll run it through AI at the end of the year.
Yeah.
XXX.
Yes.
Right, so I hope you enjoyed our kind of summer wrap-up. Ben?
Quick one. We've got to talk about the football, our competition. Yeah. So you're marginally ahead on our teams from our sweep the other week. You're 4 points ahead at the moment. But the big one is on Saturday, England-Norway, in which that is we both have it. You have England, I have Norway. And so obviously I want England to win, really. But
you'll be rowing in the background.
I'll sacrifice, banging the drum.
Yeah.
So that is going to be interesting. And what's your call on the winner?
The overall winner?
Yeah.
I am still going to say it's France.
Okay, I think just to be different and just to call it now and whisper it quietly, I think England might win it. Because they've got an easy run, relatively easy run through, and I think that game they just played was very character building. Yes. I think that's what they needed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think France are better skill-wise. I mean, I think they are better skill-wise, but I don't think it always comes down to that in the end. I think it's the team that really wants to win it and has the confidence, and I think they will have. Hopefully, I think they picked up that from that cauldron and the Azteca. Yeah,
I think you could be right. So because France haven't really been tested yet, have they?
No.
So
We've been to that. Definitely baptism of fire on that one.
Yeah,
and we've had some rubbish games and we've kind of had a lot of stuff going on and they've come through it.
Yeah. So obviously, let's hope it comes home. It'll be be fun.
I've said it. Luckily, we've recorded me saying it.
Yeah.
And we'll scrub it if obviously they don't. If you get knocked out on Saturday.
This bit we'll re-record the ending.
Yeah.
Right, we're going off for summer break. I'm going to watch a bit of cycling. What are you doing?
Tour de France. I'm going to Spain, so there's a chance I might be watching the World Cup final in Spain.
Oh,
imagine!
Fantastic.
If it was, can it be England and Spain?
No, I think
can't be. Can it? We're the wrong side of the draw.
Yeah.
Well, I might be watching England, France then.
Yeah. There we are. Good. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back in the autumn with more events and podcasts. And you've got your leading underwriters.
Leading underwriters. I must admit, yes, that's coming out next week. The London's leading underwriters report will be out. We will review it when we come back. Yes, over 800 underwriters nominated. All the rankings will be there next Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock. It's out, so it'll be all over. Nice little present to everybody before they go on their summer holidays. They can tell their families, if they appeared in it, how great they are.
Good. Right, look forward to that. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the autumn.
Happy holidays.
Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.